Hello, welcome to Young and Driven Next Gen Changemakers, the podcast where we spotlight bold, inspiring stories from leaders, creatives, and entrepreneurs who are building legacies with passion and purpose. I'm your host, Violet Mochenu, and today I'm joined by Annabel Adeyinka, a creative force who left the corporate world behind to build a thriving career in interior design. Annabel is the founder of Studio Ọkàn, a luxury interior design studio, and thrived in the corporate world where she was leading multi-million-pound projects for global firms. Hi, how are you?
Hi, good, thank you. So excited to join you today.
I'm so excited to have you here today. I'm really, really excited. I have to just set the scene for everybody. Annabel and I have been trying to record this podcast for the longest time. And I'm so glad that we're finally here. We've made the diaries work and we're here. We're here. Thank you so much for joining me. So listen, I'm very fascinated by your story and I feel like your story will resonate with lots of different people. So before I deep dive into where you are now with Studio Ọkàn, I really would just want to take it back a little bit to your previous life where you worked in the corporate space. So you started working in finance and innovation. What drew you into that world initially, and where did you first sense it wasn't where you were meant to stay?
Yes, so I originally went into that world because I didn't have clarity, that long-term clarity of what my future looked like. In that scenario, I just felt it was best to kind of use the skill set that I was really good at, not necessarily what I loved. And I knew I wanted to run a business. That was always the goal, but I didn't know how to get there. And so I just thought, let me build and gather a certain amount of skills in order to do that. And then once I kind of get there, I kind of figure it out as I go. And so, yeah, so I always love numbers, always being good with dates and numbers. I grew up in the 90s, so we didn't have iPhones that saved your number. I was the kind of family phone book on birthday and dates. It was great. I mean, I still do, to be fair. Don't tell me your birthday because I will not forget it. And so, yeah, always love numbers. They've always loved me. And so just followed that path naturally. And that looked like going into accounting, business and finance, and then stepping into that corporate world and working for the Big Four. I originally would work at the Big Four. And then the short-term plan was always to just work my way up until clarity came. And I didn't know when that was going to come or what that would look like or what it would be. But I kind of stuck with it. Was really, really proud of the career that I built in corporate. Coined a rising star, lots of accolades, lots of recognition, and had a really good impact on the industry that I worked in. And also kept so much of that part of me in my story now. And the point where I first sensed it wasn't for me, it wasn't a kind of epiphany, if you will. It's always something I knew at the back of mind, like absolutely going to excel at what I can with what's in front of me and with what I know, but always knew I would be called for something bigger and greater.
Oh, I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. And you talked about clarity. Tell me a little bit more about that. How did that clarity come to you? Because I feel like this is something that a lot of people struggle with, in trying to make that transition from working a 9-to-5 successful job, very secure environment, which you did all of those things and you did that so amazingly and clearly were very successful. But what does clarity look like? How does that feel for you to the point where you're clear about the next step to take and this is what it looks like?
Yes, I absolutely love that question. And I appreciate that clarity looks different for everyone. My personal relationship with clarity it's come over time. It's been a kind of quiet presence, knowing, a quiet unveiling, if you will. And that's not been one particular moment. It hasn't been one big, dramatic thing that I was like, oh, this is the moment. This is the epiphany. This is the light bulb. It's been just through silence and stillness. And I really appreciate how hard that is to carve out and make room for when you are in a corporate job that demands so much of your time. How I did that was not necessarily to gain clarity on what my life would look like, but just for peace of mind and an opportunity to reset. Because when you work in corporate, you pour, or specifically me, in my story, I poured so much of who I am into my role in order to be great at it. And so I would often find that I would be on the brink of burnout, if I'm really honest, and then need time to reset. So that silence, the driver for that silence was to reset and for my body and just to kind of re-nourish and reset. But in those quiet, still moments, that's when I started to have a bit more space to think, right? A bit more headspace, a bit more space to be me and to listen to my body and to think about the bigger picture, look further down the road. What does my life look like? What is the calling? And really just, listen, to be honest. I'm quite a spiritual person. So a lot of it was in opportunities where I would travel, mainly to the other side of the world. I think when we're very far away from London or from Europe and things as we know it, and we're in a completely different culture, it almost shakes the body to kind of wake up or reset in a way I can't really articulate. And so I would find I would have these really big, long trips. Not necessarily designed for this intention, but just to have some fun. And it would be in the right moment that, just little pieces of something more would come to me. And this was a fairly, relatively speaking, long process. It wasn't something that happened in 4 weeks. For me, I sat with the decision. I thought about it. I spoke about it with friends, family, tested ideas, and just had soundboards around me with people that love and care about me. And then ultimately made the decision to leave corporate.
I really love your candidness about the fact that you appreciate that clarity is the same for everybody, right? Because I often feel like sometimes people who are aspiring to make a transition from one career to another, whether that be from corporate to entrepreneurship or just even pivoting within your corporate career, it can be quite hard sometimes to really have a sense of direction about what clarity looks like. Because there's so much noise out there, so much advice, right, from different people who have walked different paths and who have different circumstances. But your honesty about actually clarity for me was what it looked like for me, and it's very different for everybody. And I think that honesty is really important. And for me, that's one of the aspects of what I want this podcast to be centered around, just real honest conversations that are very candid where people can relate to as well. So absolutely love that honesty. And also I absolutely love the fact that you just stopped to listen to your body, but actually didn't necessarily have the intention of what a plan looked like, but you just stopped to go and have some fun. Because sometimes in those quiet, fun moments is where a sense of clarity can come as well. And oftentimes we don't always take that time out. You're sort of stuck in the grind and doing what you need to do, but you don't always necessarily have the time to just take a step back. And I feel like that's a lot of times that's where the magic happens. So yeah, I love that. It's really powerful.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say about clarity as well is I think as a society, we think clarity is going to come from listening to things or reading things or watching things or speaking to people and them telling us what we should do. But the one thing in my experience with clarity is it comes from within. And so you just need to be quiet enough to just listen to it and see where it takes you.
Yeah. Powerful, beautiful. I can certainly see where your spiritualness comes into play with your values. You talked a little bit about your previous life in the corporate world. And as you've said, you did a really amazing you had a really amazing career and you learned a lot of things and achieved a lot in that space. And I would imagine that you gained a lot of really great skills as well. So what are some of those skills that you gained from your previous life that you've then incorporated into your studio, launching that into how successful it has been now? What are some of those skill sets? What was the mindset?
That's a great question because often when I'm speaking to people, I speak so much about transferable skills. And they absolutely have helped me establish ground with my studio and bringing this vision to life. I think a lot of times from every experience in life, I'm very good at kind of distilling that down into wisdom and being like, okay, I may not love this experience, but what can I learn from it? Or how can I carry this forward into a new part of my life? And that is exactly what's happened here. So I absolutely love this question. So the list is endless. I don't even know where to begin. Everything from how to speak, which sounds so rudimentary, but in terms of like how to portray yourself to a stranger. So how to build connection from nothing, how to connect with someone who's in a completely different world to you. That was a really big skill. I remember I would be looking completely different to the clients I used to work with in terms of demographic, and then trying to reach into their world in order to find common ground so that they would trust me, like me, and therefore I could then do the job that I needed to do and have a great impact. That has been absolutely one of the biggest skills that I've taken given the industry that I've entered. Everything from project management to time management to how to win work, how to present, how to explain something really complex in a really simple way, how to apply my emotional intelligence in a room. So if someone is looking very confused, not to call them up on it, but maybe to go into a bit more detail about what I mean. Equally, if someone looks like they're in a rush, then maybe kind of distilling my information into like 2 or 3 bullet points that they can take away. How to be patient, how to navigate scenarios that you didn't predict for, and how to remain those scenarios. The cost management, there's so many skills, honestly, that I've picked up. And I don't know if they were at the time lessons I thought, oh, I'm definitely going to use this to be an entrepreneur, but they have stayed with me. And they show up every day and they help me solve some of the challenges you would face starting out a studio with the objectives that we have.
That's great, actually, great to hear. And I love that you mentioned emotional intelligence as well, because I feel like emotional amongst all the other skills that you talked about, but it feels like emotional for me anyway. Emotional intelligence is one of the core foundations of good relationship building. And I suspect your business is all about relationship building, right?
All about connection. All of which is not just with people, but also how I want people to connect with the spaces that we design, how I want them to connect with me as a company and our ethos, how I want them to remember me, how I want potential families to connect in the space that I design. Connection is so, so key for what we do. And so very grateful to have got the initial experience or exposure to what that looks like in terms of connecting with a stranger and then
Right.
taking it from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does your culture influence the creative aspect of the work that you do?
I am British, but I'm also a Nigerian heritage and specifically Yoruba. And so I think when you grow up in a country where your culture isn't represented on a larger scale and is only experienced in moments with family on weekends, even your name. I don't know if a lot of people speak about this, but obviously I have an English name and then I have a Yoruba name. And so it was really important for me to kind of bring my heritage along with me because it's very much part of my story. It's very much shaped who I am, my identity, how I navigate spaces, how I navigate rooms with people that don't like me. And so I really wanted to incorporate that Yoruba heritage that sits within me, within the company. What that looks like isn't necessarily bringing a Yoruba kind of style or an African design style into every project, but it's more about the philosophy. It's more about the philosophy of kind of rootedness and groundedness and purity and kind of linking back to everything that you might not necessarily see on the surface, but underneath. So if
Mm.
are in one of our spaces, the idea is that it's not going to reflect necessarily an African culture, but the idea is that it's going to remind you or take you back to the origin story. And so whatever that looks like for each project is completely different. And obviously it's my origin story. And so that's why I decided to name the company Studio Ọkàn. Ọkàn being soul in Yoruba, and that is exactly what we do. We bring soul-led design into the world, and I think that we can have a lot of a lot of spaces where you can walk into them and they can feel really grand and maybe maximalist and very luxurious and really decadent. That's the word I was looking for. And
Mm.
for us, it's really about kind of stripping that back to its purity, back to its roots, back to its groundedness, and focusing on how you feel in the space, not just how it looks, but how do you feel when you step in, and how do I want the client to feel? And so ultimately, our ethos is we design spaces to be felt, not just seen. And so that's really where the Yoruba culture kind of links in terms of the British precision. That is very much, who I am in terms of what's been crafted from me from the corporate world. So it's really important that I married those two. So it's not necessarily going to be, this really slow, dreamy, unprofessional process when you work with us. Outcome in terms of design is definitely going to touch you in a way that other spaces can't.
Yeah, I absolutely love how you blend your Britishness and your heritage from your Yoruba background and how that sort of meshes together and really forms part of your philosophy. And I can really feel that comes through. And wow, I had no idea that your studio means soul in Yoruba, and that's
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I would really recommend anybody listening to this podcast or watching it, just go and check out Annabelle's website because you just really get a sense of this philosophy coming through her work. And that's really inspiring. I mean, where do you find, and I feel like you've answered this a little bit already, but, where do you find the inspiration to create at the level that you're creating? When I talk about level, I'm talking about the sort of decadence and the quality at the standard which you're really producing beautiful, beautiful work for various different clients across the luxury market.
Yes. See, I don't know if I find it specifically. I think it's just in me. I didn't set up a company to say that I want to work for luxury clients and high end. I think what I'm trying to achieve, which is designing spaces solely on how you feel, ultimately is a luxury, right? We're not designing from a place of necessity. We aren't serving clients that are looking for, they just need a sofa or they just need a insert item. We are very much looking at people that have the opportunity to slow down and to be still and to be grounded and to think about more and not just to think about how to survive, but what does it actually look like? How can they reach their own fulfillment, or how can they craft or create these spaces that will capture memories that are really important to them? And so inherently that belongs in the luxury end of the market. It's just where it
Right.
happens to sit because those people have time to think about these things, right? And so it isn't necessarily that we kind of went after the higher end of the market. It's just inherent to having the appreciation, gratitude time to be able to carve out space for the things
Right.
that people want to focus on. In terms of how I created this level, I would say it's very much a lot of inspiration comes from my life. And that doesn't necessarily mean travel. That could mean a conversation. It could be a book. It could be something I've been exposed to. One thing I've noticed about my life and design is that the two are intertwined. I used to think that this is going a little bit off topic, but I'm going to give the bigger picture here. I used to think that you had maybe 7 separate ecosystems of life, right?
Right.
And you would have your work life, then you would have your personal life, then you would have a romantic relationship, then you would have your health and well-being and so on. What I've noticed about stepping into running my own company and designing my life ultimately is that they're all intertwined. So there isn't really any segregation in my life where I can say this is the entrepreneur part of me, or this is just the business, or this is just the friendship part of me. All of me shows up in every single section of life. So how I show up one place is how I show up everywhere. And
Yeah.
now I have unapologetically infused all of the parts of me together. And so I think that does something really powerful when we take a second to do that, because now I show up as authentic Annabel in every email, every client meeting, every site visit, every design, every meeting with the designers that work for me, as well as every conversation, every barbecue that I go to, every birthday party. But I think that it does something really, really special. It stops you having this on-off approach or attitude, I suppose. And so that's why I find that I can be so inspired by something that has nothing to do with work. And they are the richest designs. They are the richest design concepts that kind of find their way through into actual realization into a project. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
not necessarily an on-off. It's not um, trying to achieve. It's not segregating parts of myself. It's just all of me, all of my soul
Mhm.
into my work. And then the result is something that the client likes, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. From what I've seen, girl, it looks good. And I'm no creative designer or interior designer, but wow, it's absolutely stunning. And that's a really interesting perspective that you've just given there. And I think some might say that in a luxury market, that often, sameness is rewarded. And it sounds like you're really fueled by lots of different aspects of who you are and what's around you, and you really incorporate that and infuses your creativity and your inspiration to really boldly develop work that really resonates either with your client but also is very true and authentic to who you are. I mean, is that fair to say? Would you say that that's a kind of a point of difference that you're really trying to envelop with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And that can come through in a number of different ways. So for me, or let's take it back a step. So I would say maybe this might be a bit unfair to assume that everyone thinks this, but the idea is that perhaps with luxury, you might think that you'll just get loads of designer furniture in a room. You might go for the most expensive option because it's luxury and why wouldn't you? And there's no budget. Or you may go for something that looks ultimately perfectly designed. And what I mean by
Mm.
that is maybe it's symmetrical, maybe it's perfectly balanced. I like to challenge that. And I think the spaces that speak to you the most and touch you the most are the ones that are imperfect, because as humans, we are imperfect, right? And so one of the ways I'll intentionally do that is try to be more purist. So purist in design, and my design is not necessarily painting walls, but it's okay, how do we introduce textures? Or how do we only have colors in a property that are actually the natural colors? So if we want brown, why not just use wood rather than paint plaster brown, if that makes sense? So it's a very purist attitude and mindset, which reflects earth, which reflects us, and it's something that creates an inherent timelessness, sorry, to the projects that we design.
Yeah.
The other thing is using freeform. So a lot of the time you can walk into a room, let's say you have a living room and you have perfectly one sofa in each side and it's like, really balanced, it's symmetrical. The idea is for us is we would flip that on its head and say, okay, what about if there are curves? So a lot of the time we're creating bespoke furniture or using curved furniture, which are just imperfect, right? It's just more
Mhm.
inviting. It's more
Mhm.
honest. It doesn't require
Yeah.
you to feel so uptight when you walk in a room, and actually you can
Mhm.
relax and drop your shoulders. Same as the tones we use, so very organic, very natural, very much colors you would find in the earth, be that clay or cement or whatever it is. So again, just really reflecting these natural things in earth, because when I've ever traveled to the places that have these naturally, they it's unlike anything else. It's unlike anything you see. It's unlike anything you can explain. And so it's really just trying to emulate that internally inside interiors in projects.
Absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. I'm so inspired. As I said, I know nothing about interior design, but I feel like I'm going to start designing my living room after this call.
Love it. Love it.
And also, I think a point just around sometimes luxury isn't necessarily about having big budgets, but it's actually how do you sort of work with what you have to really, create some texture, something a little bit different. And yeah, just, because luxury isn't always about, cost, right? But yeah, I definitely feel inspired. I definitely do. So I want to talk a little bit about, so we've talked creativity. I want to talk about the business side of things, right? So, and I know we talked a little bit about this as well at the beginning, but what would you say are some of the myths that are linked to entrepreneurship, and what are those myths that you wish more people would challenge?
Yeah, great question. I think that I've kind of touched on this a little bit in terms of the biggest myth. I would say the headline is thinking you need to have it all figured out or thinking you
Mm,
need to have a detailed plan. I think probably it's a systematic thing. When we're in school, we kind of asked, what do you want to be? I think, is it 14? And then you do some work experience and then you choose your A
right.
levels and then you go to university and then you build out this career, all based on something you decided when you were far too young to decide what you
Right.
wanted to do for your whole life. And so many young people I meet are speaking about things that are 10, 15 years in the future. And I'm like, we're in today, and they are way, way ahead of where we're actually at, which is good and bad, right? I always think is a balance in terms of looking down the road. Um, but what that does, though, it can sometimes cripple you. So it
Mm,
can cripple movement, it can cripple action. From a entrepreneurial perspective, it absolutely isn't a blueprint, isn't this perfect framework that is
right.
written out for you. And I know a lot of people might be a bit of an unpopular, a bit of a controversial thing to say, but I know a lot of people say, oh, this is the blueprint, this is how you do the thing. And absolutely, you can speak to a wider ethos, but ultimately, there's only so far you need to look down the road to be able to take the first step.
Right.
So to put that into an analogy, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's foggy. I don't know. Should we go for that? Let's go. We're
Yeah, let's
driving,
go
it's
with
foggy.
that.
Just come to me. So we're driving down a road. It's a bright day, but it's a bit foggy. You can't quite see, maybe beyond 100 meters visibility. And people think you need to be able to see 100 meters visibility to be able to, drive the car. And
Right.
ultimately, as long as you can see about 20 to 30 meters in front of you, you're fine to take the next step, because you don't have to run 100 meters. You just need to take the next step. You need to drive a little bit more. And as you get there, more and more will be revealed. And I think it's so
Yeah.
important to have that, and to remain malleable, because I think if you are too set in the future and what everything should look like,
Right.
when you are deterred down a different path, because that's very much what entrepreneurship is, you will potentially, be really disheartened that something hasn't gone
Mhm.
exactly as you thought, because you were trying to draw this specific path. So I think, yeah, the main myth is you don't need a detailed plan. You need enough of a plan, granted, but it just needs to be enough to get you to the first step, and then you kind of figure out the next step from there.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I feel like if there's one key takeaway for anybody out there with a really brilliant idea and they just can't, they haven't started, want to kick it off, this is a really good key takeaway. You don't have to have it all figured out, because you're right, it actually sometimes can be very crippling. And I think also often, as you said, with society kind of really having these markers or milestones that you should be doing by a certain age at this point and at that point, and if you don't do it this way, sometimes that can be quite disheartening if you just want to do something a little bit outside
Yeah.
of the norm, and you have an idea and you don't necessarily know where to start. You don't need to have everything all figured out. You just have to go for it and do it. So progress over perfection, someone said to me recently. So
Yeah.
that's a really good one to take away for
Love
sure.
that. Yeah.
And how do you, just thinking about the future, because again, for me, this the ethos, if you will, of this podcast is about next gen, right? People who are really making a difference in the world in some shape or form. I feel like world sounds really grand, but that might be on a micro scale in your local community, in your sector. And how do you sort of, people who are leading change, how do you see the world of interior design evolving, and what role do you want Studio Ọkàn to play leading that change?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. I think when we look to the future, it's important to look up and look further down the road every now and
Mm,
again, but not to kind of stay there, because ultimately we were in the present, right? So in terms of where we're at, we're at the brink of a digital age, right? Everything as we know it,
yeah.
our school systems, everything is almost spinning on its head. It's being redefined.
Yeah.
In terms of customer or the clients that we serve, they are ultimately in a position where, ultimately they could purchase most things, right? They could have everything. And then we have this kind of instant gratification world that we live in where we want
Yeah.
something yesterday. We have very
Yeah.
short
I want it now,
want it
not
now. We have
tomorrow.
yeah, exactly. Even we're seeing statistics saying that, once upon a time we would watch a video for 2 minutes and now it's 30
Right,
seconds, five
right.
seconds, who knows? And so that's what I really love about what we're building and Studio Okan's role and place in interior design is
Mm,
because we're creating touches you in a way that other things can't. So you can have money, you can buy all the things, but I think in terms of actual fulfillment, in terms of actual peace, in terms of actual stillness, there is always going to be a room for it because we are human and we need to reset and we need to connect to something that is bigger than us. It isn't about keeping up the pace. It isn't about necessarily trying to digitize what we do. Of course, there's a role for AI to play in the company in terms of
yeah.
productivity and how we move through the world, and how we become more efficient and pour more of ourselves into the actual love of design as opposed to the automated bits of a business. But there is definitely always going to be a space that perhaps Studio Okan is spearheading. I haven't really seen anyone else that's kind of working to this specific niche that I'm speaking about. But the idea is that there'll always be time to slow down. There'll always be time for something true. And I think when we're just remaining honest, when we move forward in all designs and staying true to self and staying true to soul and remaining grounded, we're always going to have a place in the market for interior. We're always, as humans, going to need places to live. We're always going to need to inhabit buildings. So that's the idea. That's where I'm seeing it going. It's remaining open, ear to the ground, using technology as it exists, but
Yeah.
never ever losing sight of that connection piece that we spoke about.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think in the digital age, it's very easy sometimes to knee jerk to just want to sort of jump on the bandwagon or even get overwhelmed and you don't quite know where you fit into that space, either with your business or your career. But I also love that you're embracing the change in the world, the way the world is going, but also really still want to remain rooted in the ethos and the philosophy of where you started. So that's really, really powerful to hear as well. Listen, you've achieved so much, not least in your corporate world, but also with the work that you're doing with your studio at the moment. What's the next big thing? What are you most excited about in terms of your challenge? I'm sure you have many challenges. I'm sure you have lots of things that you're excited about. But
Yeah.
what are some of those things that you'd say, wow, that really sets my soul on fire, and I can't wait to get stuck into it, or I can't wait to see that unfold?
That's a great question. There's so many. I'm trying to choose one. I think the highlight or the headline of the moment for me is going to have to be building out a team in terms of an integral team. So integrating parts of me into other people that work alongside me. And at the moment, I have a team. They are designers, and they're very much focused on the design aspects. But really building a core team that can buy into the vision of Studio Okan and what we're building as much as I can. Very excited. Again, it's that connection piece
Yeah.
to connect with colleagues and people that I can work shoulder to shoulder with on something so much bigger than us. That's definitely the focus at the moment.
Yeah, fabulous. You are set for some big things. I mean, you're already doing some big things. I'm very excited to see how things are going to unfold for you as well. So it's been really, really good to have this conversation. I feel like I want to have you back for another episode and we want to follow this journey over the coming months at some point. So let's talk again if we can get it in the diary, which was a challenge. So we've come to the segment that I like to call screen time. So this is just a little bit of fun that I tells me a lot about my guests. So I call it screen time. So it's a quick fire round where we kind of talk through a little bit about what's happening with your phone. All right. Do you have your phone in front of you? Are you ready?
I do have my phone in front of me. Okay.
Yeah. What's your average daily screen time and what do you think it says about you?
Oh, this came up yesterday. I remember it. It's 6 hours, I think. Yeah, 6 hours. I don't know how many hours I'm awake. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. What I will do is caveat and say I do a lot of business on the phone,
Okay.
a lot of business on WhatsApp, which is life changing. Very much
Yeah.
moved away from email, which is great.
Yeah.
But hopefully, it says that I'm a hard worker. I'm not on
Oh, it
social
does.
media.
Yeah, yeah. You're a hard worker and you're embracing technology, right? And taking
Yeah,
advantage of it. You're
yeah,
working on the
exactly,
go. So
exactly.
I'm sure obviously WhatsApp is also for family time, fun stuff, and all that good stuff as
Yeah,
well. 'Cause,
cool.
you got to have a good life balance as well,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
What app do you spend the most time on and why? This is going to be a very interesting one for you because I feel like you're such a multi-dimensional person. I'm very interested to
Uh,
hear.
yeah, I don't even need to check. I already know it's ChatGPT. Yeah, yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
use it
so
for?
technology is here, right? AI is here. The future is here.
Mm,
As they say. So very much testing ideas. Not so much. I think a lot of people use it for kind of messaging and like how to refine text and things like that. I take it probably as far as it can go. So really push the boundaries of it, seeing ideas, challenging it, getting it to challenge me. Yeah, just opportunities for these big crazy ideas that I have to land and then be thrown back at
Yeah.
me, and then I can see
Yeah.
if it makes sense, if I want to pursue them, and then maybe figuring out what that looks like. But yeah,
Yeah.
very much back and forth, as opposed to as a chat, right? As an actual chat,
Yeah. Yeah.
opposed
Yeah. Yeah.
as opposed to, kind of email writing and things like that.
I feel like tech is a theme so far with these two
I
questions for you.
know,
It's a
yeah,
golden thread. You're leveraging it, which is really good to hear. And we have to, right? You've got to roll with the times. So yeah, absolutely
absolutely.
love that. Okay, the next one. How many unread notifications do you have on your phone right now? In this,
Oh,
it could either be like WhatsApp messages or even email, which I assume obviously you'd have your emails on the go.
yeah.
And having so many or so little unread notifications, what do you think that says about you?
Well, okay, so just open up WhatsApp. I'm going to go for that one because it's kind of business and personal. I've got
Yeah,
three, three unread. That's pretty good. I'm
that's
pretty,
pretty good.
pretty impressed with that.
That's pretty damn good. I'm very
I'm going to
impressed with
say,
that.
it makes me very efficient. I don't know. If I think about the three messages I haven't actually read, they are action taking by me, and I just haven't got a chance to do the
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, three. I think I'm really impressed by that.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. I wholeheartedly agree. It's speaking Mrs. Efficiency for sure.
Right? Yeah, so you can always get hold of me, which is great. But yeah, if there's an action with me, then like, check a date in the diary. I'll be like, okay, give me a
That's really impressive, actually. Yeah, I know so many people who don't have anywhere near that, including myself. So don't ask me that question
really.
because, yeah, it's crazy. Sorry, what's the last thing that you wrote on your notes app?
This is fun. Let me have a look. This was last night. Or was it the day before? Oh, the last words, like it's the sentence, is dream hyphen try hyphen fail slash build. I don't know.
Oh, tell me
Yeah.
more about that.
I was thinking about what was I thinking? I don't even know. I was just thinking about my process. That was it. Because I
Yeah,
was a lot of my process in design, like I said, there's no blueprint, right? There's no this is what you do. And so
yeah,
a lot of it relies on kind of heart, mind, body, soul, gut. I think they're like the five
yeah.
areas. And so I was just thinking about what is my process? Not for this at all, actually. I don't know why I actually wrote that down. Let me read more of what hold on. I wonder why I've actually wrote that.
Take your time. Take your time. I'm so
Oh,
curious.
I was speaking about the perspective of trying. I was watching something, again, nothing related to this, and I just had this
Yeah,
random thought, and I was like, I love that. I love it when people try. I love it when people just try, right? You don't know how it's going to work out. You don't know if it makes any sense, if it's crazy, if it's bold, if it's not bold, if it's big, if it's small, you don't know, but you try. And it's one thing I've
yeah,
noticed I do in my life in every single area. And
yeah.
so that's what I wrote. I wrote, yeah, I love the perspective of trying every single day no matter what you're working on. And then I wrote, yeah, dream, try, and then you fail or you build, depending on which one.
Oh my gosh, you need to WhatsApp that to me straight away after this. I need that on my screensaver. I really, really love that. And I really feel like it just sums up who you are and everything that you've spoken about with the work that you're doing, just your values and your philosophy and everything that you're trying to achieve in this life. And yeah, I think that's a really, really good overarching summary, definitely, of who you are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
absolutely love
like how
it.
you took that as well. You said in terms of everything I'm trying to achieve in this life. Because I think
Yeah.
I am thinking very much about designing a life. I think I said that. So I'm very much
Mm,
designing a life, and then you have business within that, right? And you have relationships within that,
yeah.
and you have health and well-being within that, and food and nutrition. But it's very much
Yeah.
creating this life. And for me, I think the bigger picture is freedom. And so that is
Mm,
creative, that is financial, that is geographical. And so
yeah.
the business that I'm creating, I think why, again, the market that I serve is so suiting is one, I get to put me into a company and something bigger than
Yeah.
me, but also having create freedom is expression of self, right? It's
Mm,
purpose, it's legacy, it's leaving part of you in something that
mm.
isn't you. So yeah, absolutely love the concept of designing the life rather than the business.
Yeah, love it, love it. Beautiful. My final question, I couldn't let you go without asking this one, right? So this is if you could have any, well, and the reason I'm asking this question is I feel before I even asked you, it's because I feel like there's something around when you're really trying to build something quite special as you are, community is everything, right? Finding your tribe and keeping them close. So I want to ask if there was any famous interior designer or somebody who's in your line of work that you really admire and would love to be in community with, who would that be and why?
I feel like I'm at the intersection of interior design meets entrepreneurship, right? I feel like I'm both. So when
Oh,
people ask me a question, I'm like, am I answering with my business hat or my designer?
mm,
And so I was going to speak to what was the question? Like a role model or someone, an ideal person?
Yeah, or somebody that
Yeah,
you would have on your speed dial who's
yeah,
in your community, who's in your
yeah.
tribe, shall we say? Yeah.
I'm excited for this question. Okay, so first, let's do interior design. Interior design would be Kelly Worster. Um,
Oh,
yes, a unique design. I stayed in one of the properties in a hotel that she designed a couple of years ago, and it stayed with me. It's like nothing else. It's all eclectic pieces from all over the world. Very much the essence of the philosophy of what I do and what I want to bring to projects, but of course executed in her own way. From a business perspective, would choose Emma Greed. I
oh,
love the story. It's
yeah,
very similar in terms of not being surrounded necessarily by big thinkers or entrepreneurs or having that hand and then kind of carving out what that looks like. She also went through corporate.
yeah,
Then of course has built something so much bigger than her and has such a big empire that she's created, which I think is
right.
amazing. So yeah, they're the two people I would definitely want to speak to and have in my life.
Amazing. Kelly and Emma, if you're listening, hit up Annabel.
That's it.
Like yesterday. Oh my goodness, I really enjoyed this conversation, Annabel. Thank you so much. It's been so energizing, and I hope that everybody who's listening would find it equally as energizing and inspiring as I have. Where can people find you, learn more about you, your business, socials, and website?
Yeah, love that. So trying to share more of my life behind the scenes, what I get up to, because everyone keeps asking me to. So you can find my life on Instagram at Annabel Lux. That's Annabel Annabel Lux with a hyphen at the end.
Yeah.
And then in terms of business, you can find me at studio-ọkàn.com. And then on our business Instagram as well, the link is on the website, but also it's at studio.ọkàn and then _ as well. So yeah, follow along the journey. I'm very excited to share more, even though it's scary.
And you're doing it. I'm excited. Look forward to what you've got next, and you're doing amazing. So thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to having you back again soon. And thank you to everyone for listening. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.